Welcome to this MOL webinar. I'm going to be your host today. My name's Paul Jager. I'm head of the Property Agency and Property Law Division at MOL. And today we're going to be looking at the diploma courses that we provide for both conveyancing and probate law. Now, I did check just a little earlier. I did check that everyone could hear me. Now, I noticed we got a lot more people in the webinar room. So again, if I can just do a little bit of housekeeping and just check with you, there's a chat box probably to the right of your screen. Those of you who are new into the webinar room, can I just check that you can hear me? If you can just put in the chat box, yes, the volume's fine, or yes, we can hear you, yes, we can see the screen, that would be absolutely wonderful. And then once I know that we're okay at that level, then I know we can get ourselves up and running. So I'll just give it a few seconds while everybody gets to use the chat box. And fabulous. Yes, I'm getting messages too. You can hear me. That's wonderful. Good. So we can start. So you should now be able to see the agenda for our webinar. I imagine the webinar is going to take about 30, maybe 40 minutes at the very most, and then there'll be an opportunity for questions. And it's really the chance for those of you who are contemplating coming on the course with us, really to understand a little bit about what the course involves, what learning materials are available to you, what assessments there are at the end of the program. And then we're going to be covering prices, and also we're going to be talking about an advanced learner loan that's available to you, for which we're going to have my colleague Dan Borden give you some information on that. Dan, in fact, should be on the line already listening in. Dan, can I just confirm you're there with us?
Yes, I'm here with you.
Hello, Dan. Thanks for turning up. So Dan has a little bit of a wait while I do my little party piece, and then Dan will give you information, as I say, on prices and the advanced learner loan as well. So if everybody's happy with that, I guess the first place to start is just to give you a little bit of information about who MOL is. And you can see on the slide here, I'll give you just a few seconds just to have a read through to see who we are. So while you're reading that, if I explain, we're part of the LTE group, and that's a group that includes the Manchester College, it includes ourselves, MOL, and we are a department. We deal with the training of professional individuals, perhaps like yourselves. And you can see here the other types of courses that we run and the types of organisations that we deal with. And then just to really sort of guide you on the flexibility and the sort of applications that we deal with. While you're reading this, I guess I should also add that don't worry if you miss anything. We are recording this session, and we will make sure that it is available on our website at some stage, so you will be able to listen to it again if you need to. So, having just really had a little look at who we are, I've now got a bit of background on us. If I also just guide you, because we've been providing these courses for some time now. We launched them at the beginning of last year, so we're a year into them. But as time goes on, the programs do get revised and enhanced to better meet learner needs. And if any of you are aware of these programs already, it might be useful for you just to get an idea of how we've enhanced them from what we originally had. So we now have multiple mock assessment papers. There is an induction webinar, which we do for all our new people to get them up and running on the program. There is assessment support, so this is the final unit assessment that you'll be doing. We now have the final unit assessments are in fact our own papers that, now that we've written ourselves and have been approved by SQA, which is the awarding body. We've also got an extended period now for any of you that want to do the full diploma, and Dan will be covering that towards the end of this webinar, and he'll also cover the other bits here, which is the advanced learner loan and also the pricing and the other plans that we have for you. This is really how the program has changed, and it really is brand new for 2018. I thought it might also be useful if we also confirm the actual qualifications themselves and what they include. You may already know that both the conveyancing program and the probate program are available at what's called level 4 and level 6. Now, level 4 qualification is a similar level to an HNC, or similar to perhaps the first year of a degree. And you can see here the subject areas that are included in each of these streams, probate and conveyancing. The eagle-eyed amongst you will see that the first 4 units, whether you do conveyancing or probate, are in fact the same. So regardless of which one you do, the first 4 units are pretty much identical. English legal system, law of contract, land law, and the accounting unit. However, the 5th unit that you need to do to achieve the full diploma does then differ depending on whether you're doing conveyancing or probate. Those of you doing conveyancing will do a unit called Standard Conveyancing Transactions. And those of you doing probate will do the unit on law of wills. To achieve the full diploma at level 4, you will need to do all 5 units unless you have an exemption. And there are different exemptions available from this program. Now, there won't be time to cover all the possible exemptions today, but if you're considering actually enrolling on the program with us, then there will be an email address at the end, and you're very welcome to email us and talk to us about potential exemptions that you may have. So that's level 4. Then we have level 6. Now, level 6 is a similar level to the last year of a degree with honours. So quite a substantial level. Now, you can see at this level, level 6, there are in fact 3 units to do for the full diploma. And again, you might notice that in fact accounts is common to both of the diplomas, whether you're doing conveyancing or probate. Both of you need to do accounts, which I don't suppose is giving too much away to say is never the most popular of units, but it does need to be done. And then you can see on the conveyancing side, you'll then cover landlord and tenants and conveyancing law and practice. And if you're doing probate, you will cover admin of estates and again, law of wills. So I hope that guides you on the units that are covered for either level 4 or level 6. Having looked at the subject areas you're going to cover, and you can see there's quite a wide range of subject areas, but you also need quite a depth of knowledge in each of those subject areas. So to help you study and to effectively prepare for the final exam, which we'll cover a bit later, when you enroll with MOL, you will have a variety of study materials and support to help you through this program and prepare you for the final exam. So this slide is just an overview of the materials that you'll be provided with, and then I'll cover each in a little more detail so that you've got a good idea of when you start exactly the type of help that you're going to be given. So you can see at the top, printed workbook. You will have a workbook sent to you, a fairly comprehensive workbook. Some of them are extraordinarily thick workbooks, quite a bit of material to cover. However, as well as the printed workbook, you'll see a little further down the list that you also have on the virtual learning environment, which is where all your study aids are. You also have a digital copy of the workbook. So you have the opportunity not only to have the printed copy where you can obviously write notes and all the rest of it, quite a traditional way of doing things, but you also have a digital copy which you can download to a tablet, perhaps your laptop, and you can carry around with you, and obviously then study, really wherever you find yourself, I guess. But you'll get both, printed copy and access to a digital copy as well. Now, as far as the other study aids are concerned, you can see that we have here this induction section. Now, it has the words, please read, and I will come back to that in a minute. I'll tell you what that exactly means. But there is an induction when you start the program. There's a webinar induction hosted at the moment by myself, where I will guide all our learners on how the course is structured. We'll go over again the final assessments, but it's so at the start of the program you don't feel completely alone, because the program is a distance learning program. So you don't have the you don't need to leave the office. You don't have workshops that you attend. Everything is done online so that you can study at a pace that suits you and in your own time. So if you want to study 7 o'clock in the morning, or you want to study 11 o'clock at night, and I do have some students that do study 11, 12 o'clock at night, you have the facility to do that, because what we do is distance learning. It's online. You have access to the material 24/7, whenever it suits you. And our learners do like that flexibility, rather than having to be told that you will study in a classroom at 7:30 in the evening. For a lot of learners, that doesn't work for them because of either their busy work life or their busy private life, their social life. So this is an alternate way of doing things, which is very popular, which is distance learning. But anyway, going back to the induction section, when you come on the program, you're not just left alone, you're not just left adrift. You come along to the induction, and I'll explain to you exactly how the program works and the virtual environment works, and all the rest of it, so that you'll really hit the ground running when you start the program with us. There's also, on the virtual learning environment, there is a forum, which I'll cover in a minute. A place where you can ask questions and is supported by a tutor. There are webinars. These are very popular. Not only can you turn up to the webinars live, and you're very welcome to do that, but if you can't make the webinars, they are recorded, a bit like this one is, and you can then listen to the recording at your own leisure. And there are different types of webinars there that we do, and again, I'll cover those in a minute. I mentioned earlier there are mock assessment papers for you to test yourself before you sit the final exam. And again, I'll explain in a minute how those are done. And then on the virtual learning environment, there is the opportunity for you to enroll on your final exam. And again, I'll explain to you how the exams are undertaken. But this slide is really just to give you an overview of exactly what's included. This is also a good time just to mention that you're very welcome to use the chat box, the question box, if you have any questions. It's probable that I'll probably run through the program first, the information I need to give you, and then I'll come back to the questions that you ask at the end, but I won't forget about them, I promise. So, giving you a little more information about what our programs include. I mentioned that they're online and that the study aids are on this virtual learning environment that you have access to. And the first place is this induction. So the induction consists of a webinar with myself, and I guide you through the program when you start with us. But there's also an induction section on the virtual learning environment. And this includes a number of documents. It guides you on when the assessments are, how you book them. It will guide you on how to use the course. There's a lot of frequently asked questions there. It will guide you on how to use the forum, how to use the webinars. And it's probably a good time for me also to say that any of you that decide you'd like to enroll on the programs with us, please do read the induction section. It does cover a lot of useful information. And I only say that because I know when students enroll with us, they are desperately eager to start their program, and eager to avoid the induction section completely and get straight into the main part of the program with all the forums and the webinars. And they avoid the induction completely. Please do use the induction section if you do start with us. It has a lot of very useful information and will answer an awful lot of questions that new students, not unreasonably, do have. So there's a lot of information there. I mentioned also that there are webinars as part of the program that we offer. So there are 3 types of webinars. There's the induction webinar, which is the one I've already explained. When you're new to the program, we'll all meet up at an agreed time, and I'll run through exactly what the program includes to help you get up and running. But we also have content webinars. Now, these are once a month, and this is for each of those units that I showed you earlier. Once a month, it will be tutor-led, so you'll have an expert tutor who will cover a particular topic area of the unit that you're studying. Webinars tend to be evening-based, although we do have some tutors that do them during the day. And there are learners that like to do them during the day rather than the evening. So they may be in the evening, they may be in the afternoon. And as I say, the tutor will go through a particular topic area, and then you have the opportunity at the end of the webinar to ask questions, get support from the tutor. If there's something that they mentioned that you weren't quite sure what they meant during the webinar, that's your opportunity to get support from them during the webinar. And I know webinars are important, are very popular when we record them. So all of them are recorded, the recordings put on the virtual learning environment, and for a lot of our learners who are very busy during the day or really can't make the evening ones, they have those recordings there. And it's made quite a nice library of recordings now. So if you enroll with us in the next couple of days or the next couple of weeks, there's actually already a library of webinars for you to go back and listen to. Now, this is a very important part of what we provide our learners, and I know it's very important to them as well. The ability to do some mock assessment papers before you take your final assessment, so you know what's coming up when you actually sit your final paper. We have 2 full sets of mock assessment papers. These are papers that we've written ourselves, and the first set is a paper that is made available to you, again, a full paper, where we ask if you will sit it as if it was, exam conditions, and then you'll send it in to us, which means uploading it to the virtual learning environment, and it is marked by a tutor and returned back to you with feedback. So you don't just do the paper and, not quite sure how well you did. It will actually be marked with feedback to give you a really good idea of how you're faring on the program. So that's the first mock. However, there is a second mock as well, but we've done this in a slightly different way. The second mock available to you includes the mock paper, but also a set of suggested answers and the marking scheme that a tutor would use to mark this. And the reason we've done it this way is so that if early on you wanted to get an idea of what a paper might look like, but you're not ready yet to sit a paper and have it marked, then you can actually download the mock paper, the suggested answers, and the marking scheme whenever you're ready to. And you have all 3 things. It's really self-assessment, all 3 things to have a look at yourself. And what we'd suggest you do is that you do the mock paper, and then you compare it to the suggested answer paper that we've given you and the marking scheme as well. But it's very flexible to do it that way. You're not waiting for a tutor to mark anything. You can see whenever you need it exactly what a mock paper looks like. So they're the 2 mocks that are available to you, and they are full papers for you to have a go at. And just talking about the mock papers, for those of you who come on the program with us, what we would suggest is that you do the self-assessment mock first. So, because there's some anonymity with that, there's a bit of privacy there. You can have a go at the mock paper, and even if you haven't done it that brilliantly, nobody else knows. You can look at the suggested answers, and it gives you a better idea of areas of weakness that you need to go back to and restudy. Then when you've done a bit more study, that's the time we suggest you use the mock paper that the tutor will mark, because that will be a really good guide before you take the actual final unit assessment. So I hope that makes sense as to how these mocks are built into the study aids that we have. Now, I thought it might also be useful just to guide you on how all of these study aids fit in, what a plan of action might be. How do you use them? What order should you use them in to make sure that your studying is as effective as possible? Because for most of our learners, they do have busy working lives, they do have busy social lives, and they need to make sure that the time that they spend studying is as effective as possible, and that they're making the very, very most of it. So this is the plan of action that we suggest to them. Now, obviously, you don't have to follow this as a learner, but when I explain how this works, I hope you'll see that there is some logic to doing it this way. So your study plan of action starts with your enrolment with us, unsurprisingly, and you'll then be given access to the VLE and you'll be sent the printed workbook. That then gets you completely up and running, and as part of that, you will also have the induction webinar as well with myself. And I tend to do those every 6 weeks or so. So even if you start, chances are, if there's not an induction webinar on the very day that you start, there will be very soon after. Once you're up and running, the first thing you'll do is you will read the workbook. The workbook is the very core of the program. You'll work your way both through the printed copy. Don't forget, you've also got the digital copy as well to carry around with you. But the chances are, as you're reading the workbook, you're probably going to have questions about the content. It might be you don't understand something to do with easements. There's a good example, something to do with easements you're not quite sure about. Or maybe there's a bit of landlord and tenant legislation in the workbook that you're not quite sure about. That's where the forum comes in. You use the forum to ask content-related questions. The tutors moderate the forums. So the tutors will go into the forums 4 times a week and once on the weekend, so that they can then answer your questions. So you're never going to be alone. If you've got a question, you're not quite sure what the answer is to do with the content, the forum is the place to answer it. And actually, you might find that the other learners also studying that unit either will benefit from your question or will actually help to answer it as well. And where a learner does help to answer your question, again, the tutor will go back in just to make sure that the answer that the learner's given you is absolutely spot on, or maybe there's anything that they can add. But that's where the beauty of the forum is. While it's not particularly, I can't promise you an instantaneous answer within 5 minutes of you posting it, you do know that it is moderated regularly by an expert tutor who's able to guide you. And also the other beauty of a forum is that it doesn't matter what type of content question you ask. There's no embarrassment. There's complete anonymity. There's privacy. You can ask any questions that you like that you might not do in a workshop, for example, because you're never quite sure if you're asking the right question or not. On a forum where it's online, you don't have that issue at all. So we've looked at reading the workbook, and then with any questions, you'll use the forum. And then once a month, there is a content webinar, which, as I mentioned earlier, is a tutor who will be discussing a particular topic within the unit that you're covering. And there'll also be the opportunity again for you to ask questions using the chat box that you've used here today with me, to ask questions that the tutor will then answer either during the webinar or at the end of the webinar. Let's say they're once a month. So you've done the workbook, you've asked questions on the forum, you've attended the topic webinars, and at some stage you'll then get to the point where you'll begin to think about taking your final unit assessment, and that's where the mock papers come in. So you now know there's 2 sets, the self-assessed one where you can download the mock and the answers and the marking scheme. You'll probably do that first, just to give you a flavour of what to expect, and then you'll do the second paper that's marked by a tutor. You'll do that last, because that will give you a much better idea of how you're performing as far as taking a final unit is concerned. And then there's also a pre-assessment recording. This is a recording that I did with a tutor, covering taking the exams, and we look at what a good answer looks like, what an average answer looks like that passes, and what a poor answer looks like. So you can get an idea of the type of depth and the breadth of knowledge that you need when you take your final unit assessment. And then very lastly, having covered all of those actions, all of this little plan, you'll then enroll for your final unit assessment. So again, I hope that sort of makes sense. If you enroll with us, you can see that there is a real structure to what you do. You're not just left to flounder. You're not just left not knowing, well, how do I use the workbook, or when should I use the forum? There is a structure to use. You don't have to use it. The course is very flexible. If you want to do this, you don't want to use the forums, or you don't want to turn up to the webinars, that's absolutely fine. We don't make it a mandatory part of it, but you can see how it's useful fitting into this sort of step-by-step plan. So I guess, having covered all of that, it makes sense now to talk about the final unit assessment, the exam that you'll be doing at the end of each of the units that you'll be covering. The exams or assessments come in two flavours, two types. You have an assessment by assignment, and you have an assessment under exam conditions. Now, I'm going to hold my hands up because I can see a deliberate mistake here. And when I say deliberate, that's a euphemism for I've put down the wrong number. So I hope you'll forgive me, but I just noticed that you can see in that little blue box, it talks about level 6. It should say level 4. So please be assured at the end of this webinar, when it's finished, I will leave and I will smack my wrists rigorously because I didn't notice that, but it should be level 4. And level 4 and the units that you can see here, they are assessed by assignment. An assignment means that you will be given a piece of work that you will download from the virtual learning environment. You will do it in your own time. You will not go to an exam room. You do it in your own time, and then you're then given a date, a time scale in which to upload it back to the VLE again, and it is then marked. And that is your final assessment, your final unit assessment for these 4 units at level 4. So you don't go to an exam room at all, which I know pleases an awful lot of people. You don't go to an exam room, you do it in your own time, and then you upload it back to us and you're given a date to do that. So that's what assessment by assignment is. Then we have something called, at least I've got the numbering right here, thank goodness, we have something called assessment under exam conditions. This is the other type of assessment that you'll do. This is really for all the level 6 units, but also the accounts unit at level 4. So the accounts unit at level 4 and all the units at level 6 are assessment under exam conditions. And that means you go along to an exam room. Now, the locations, we use 5 locations throughout the country. And if I've got an awfully good memory, I will be able to reel those off for you. They are London and Manchester, Leeds and Birmingham, and Bristol as well. So we have 5 areas, 5 venues that we use, and we have assessments 3 times a year this year. In 2018, there will be assessments 3 times a year. So, and they're fairly, spaced out fairly equally. So if you don't make the first assessment, it's no great shake. You can then take the second assessment timescale. But level 6 and level 4 accounts, you will be assessed by going to an exam room. and doing it that way. Now, Dan, you've kept awfully quiet. Thank you so much indeed. I'm desperately hoping you're still there.
Yes, I'm still here.
Wonderful. We've come to the bit where we get to talk a little about the pricing of the course, but also the advanced learner loan that's available as well. So, Dan, I'm going to hand over to you, and just give me a shout when you'd like me to change the slide over.
Yep, no problem. Thank you for that. So yes, I'm just going to cover the details around the pricing for the course. Paul has gone through of what you do receive and the content of the course. Importantly, we come to the price of the qualification and what options you do have available to you. So across the level 4 course, there is a number of options of how you can take and pay for the course. So you can do the modules individually, so you can do them one by one, and it would take 12 months for individual modules. The pricing just sort of structured differently across different modules. So if you was looking at the English legal system module, that is priced at £595 across level 4, and each other module from that is £750. So again, if you are wanting to purchase those individually, you can do, or you can purchase those as a one-off payment and a bulk payment and doing all of the modules together. So if you do the modules together all in one go, there is a saving of £360 on an individual unit. So the level 4 would cost you £3,235. Similarly, across the level 6, you can do individual units, or you can do it all in one go and pay for it in one go, saving you a price of £290 across the level 6, costing you £2,695. Now, obviously, that's quite a substantial amount of money to pay out initially. So we have a interest-free installment plan, and we can do those on installments for you. So again, we can do the individual modules on an installment plan. So we would generally look to take an initial payment of around about 20%, or if you was looking at doing the English legal system, we would take a initial fee of £110. We would then split the remaining balance of £485 across 5 monthly instalments of £97. Or if you was looking at doing the full diploma across the level 4, total due is £3,235. So there again, we would take an initial fee of £650. The balance of £2,585 will be spread across 11 monthly instalments of £235. So again, this is an interest-free instalment plan. And that's available for you for self-funding learners. If your company was so kindly to pay for the course for you, we would request a sponsorship letter and we would invoice the company, or we could take that via debit or credit card. Eligible learners can fund a portion or large portion of this through the learner loan. So we mentioned that before, and how that works is that you would apply for that through the Student Finance England. So you would apply for that. So we would get an application form for you, and we would send out the learner loan letter to you detailing how you would apply and where you would apply, and through the Student Finance England. So again, the advanced learner loan amount for the diploma, you're only able to apply for the 24 plus learner loan if you was doing the full diploma. And if you had exemptions across that and you were still wanting to apply for the learner loan, yes, you can do. And we would take those exemptions, we would check the exemptions through our exemptions team, and we would take those into consideration. And if you were exempt from certain modules, we would then you would be exempt from those modules and complete the remaining modules of what you would need to do to complete the diploma. So going through some figures again around the learner loan, if you was doing the level 4 diploma, conveyancing or probate, the advanced learner loan amount you would get would be £1,265. So quite a large proportion of the payment of what you would receive. Then the remainder to be paid would be £1,970, and we would split that across 11 monthly instalments of £179. If you was doing the level 6 diploma, you would get a same proportion, so you would get £1,265, leaving you to pay £1,430, and we would spread that across 11 monthly instalments of £130. So as you can see, you do receive a large portion from the learner loan, and then obviously so we can split that down into interest-free monthly installments for you. So as I mentioned before, you have 12 months to complete individual modules, and then you have 2 years to complete the full diploma. So we would send all the modules out to you, and you have two years to complete that. You able to move the slide on, please, Paul?
In fact, I have been juggling a little between the learner loan slide and the pricing plan slide, keeping up with what you said. So I hope I've covered all bases with that, Dan.
Yeah, no, that looks good. So with regards to any questions or any sort of answers you need around the payment plans, we've got an email address on at the bottom of the slide there, inquiries@mollearn.com. We're happy to answer any questions you may have around payment, how you pay for it, when you need to pay for it, etc., and stuff like that. Obviously, sort of once we receive the learner loan amount, then we would then set up an interest-free instalment plan with you to take the remainder and remaining amount. And that's everything from me, Paul.
Wonderful, Dan. Thank you. Now, I've noticed that we are keeping up with time. We're not far off the 40 minutes that I did promise, so I'm glad about that. So I think this is a very good time to answer any questions, either for myself or for Dan while he's on the line. We'll be happy to guide you if we can. And we have our first question. So it's, I want to start in a month or so. I understand your price plan may change soon. Dan, I haven't heard that we're going to be changing anything. Am I able to tell Hasif that in a month or two he'll be fine with that?
No, there'll be no changes across the payment or prices. So
Hasif, you're very welcome in a month or two. What we're saying now is just as valid. No problem at all. You won't lose out on anything at all. This will all still be available to you. So there's no problem there. We'll be happy to help you on that. And again, just to reiterate what Dan had said, although we've covered particularly the figure side fairly quickly, and there's quite a few figures to cover, you're very, very welcome if you want to ring the team. In fact, I'm just going to go back if I can to the slide with the numbers. You're very, very welcome. Here we go. We can see Dan's details at the bottom for his inquiries team. You're very welcome to email them about facts and figures, but you've got a telephone number there as well, and you're very welcome to use that. Next, can we see samples of the course material? Asif, at the moment, we don't. The workbooks are fairly hefty workbooks, so we don't have any sample workbooks at the moment to have a look at. That may be something we perhaps look at in the future, but for now, the materials are as they are. There aren't any samples or anything. But having said that, if you wanted sort of just guidance and to re-listen to this and to make a decision. Again, this recording and the slides will be available to you if we've gone through things very quickly. But no samples at the moment, unfortunately. Mark, how long is the timescale for submitting assignment assessments? Mark, good question. It depends on each of the units. For some of them, it's 28 days. For one of them, it's 21 days. But you are given a necessary amount, an appropriate amount of time to be able to submit your level 4 unit assignment. It isn't you've got 3 days or 4 days, or it ranges between 21 28 days. So a fair bit of time for you to do the work you need to do before you resubmit it to us on the VLE. I hope that's a help. Asif, online lectures. Again, Asif, at the moment, there isn't sort of any sort of samples. And actually, as I was mentioning it to you, I do remember that we do have a learning and innovation team, and I know they are working on something at the moment to do with samples. So actually, I'll probably leave that subject on a more positive level. Please do watch out. It'll be on the website, I would imagine. We will have, I suspect we will have samples at some stage, I hope in the near future. I just don't want to overhype it now and tell it will be there tomorrow. But from memory, I know they are working on trying to do some samples, but not necessarily today. Won't necessarily be ready today. Hayley, how long would it take to approximately read the workbook? Oh my gosh, Hayley, I wish I had an answer for that. And in fact, that's a very similar question. We're often asked on these webinars how much time needs to be spent studying. And I have to say that after doing this for almost 14 years now, I have a fairly stock answer. I don't think you're going to like it, but I'm going to give you the answer anyway. The problem with me guiding you on how long it takes to do anything is it depends so much on the learner themselves. So it depends on how motivated they are, how much time they actually have to spend. It depends on previous knowledge and previous experience. It depends on how good they are actually at studying and learning information and remembering information as well. So I'm uncomfortable about giving any stock answer and saying to you, look, this is the time you need to allocate, an hour and a half a week or 2 hours a week, or because it really is unique to each individual. However, what I would say, Hayley, is this, if this is any help, that both the level 4 and level 6 qualifications are quite substantial qualifications. You might remember I said at the beginning that on the level 4, that's a similar level to a first-year degree, and level 6 is similar to the final year of a degree with honours. So you can take from that the studying wouldn't be, for example, just dipping into the workbook, what shall we say, 20 minutes a week. That really isn't going to hack it. It needs something a little more substantial than that, because the level that you're doing, whether it's 4 or 6, is more substantial. So I hope that helps you a little, even if I have sat on the fence just a little and not given you perhaps the answer. I know, I'm sure you would have liked me to just tell you to do 2 hours and be done with it. But, Hayley, thank you. I'm glad that's at least some guidance, so thank you for that. Mark, I think this is one for Dan. Can you still get an advanced learner loan if you have an existing student loan? Dan?
No, you won't be able to. Through the Student Finance England, you can only apply for a loan and get a loan if you haven't had anything previously.
Mark, does that help? Does that guide you? And again, I know I've said this before, but if at the end of this webinar you do have any outstanding questions, there's things we haven't covered, or things we've covered that either you can't remember or perhaps didn't make sense when we mentioned them, again, please do get hold of us. And in fact, I've just moved to the slide where you can see at the bottom a variety of numbers and email addresses as well, and our website's there as well. For you to have a look at. Asif, you might also, just going back to your question about samples, if you email inquiries at mollearn.com, which is at the bottom, and ask them to tell you when samples in the near future are going to be made available, then they'll be able to do that. Or they'll pass it on to me as head of the division, and I'll be able to do that in the future. But I'm just not sure the time scale on that, so I wouldn't want to hold up your studies just in case. Now, have I covered everything? we don't seem to have any more questions. Is there anything anybody else would like to ask? Nope, we seem to have brought ourselves to a natural close. So, can I draw this webinar to a close? Can I firstly thank Dan for coming along and giving us the information on the loans and the pricing. Dan?
No problem, thank you.
Do you know what? I'm going to hold it back. Asif's just, I've got one more question from Asif. Why pick you over other providers? Asif, that is an extraordinarily good question. And in fact, if everyone doesn't mind, I'm going to take 2 minutes just to answer that. Asif, I think it depends on what you're looking for study-wise as to what type of provider you pick. So, as I mentioned through the webinar, we're a distance learning provider. So if you want to do something that is online, if you want to do something where you don't have to concern yourself going to particular workshops and having to travel, or have to study at particular times, if that's not how you work and that doesn't fit into your lifestyle, then distance learning is an option to look at because it is so flexible, but still with the tutor support that I mentioned on the webinars and the forums and the marking of your mocks. And for a lot of people, they like that flexibility of doing the distance learning part. As far as using MOL is concerned, I guess what I would say is that we have a track record as far as being a training provider is concerned. We have a track record over many, many years. We haven't just started yesterday or last week. And we have had a year to, on this particular program, to hone the course. So we've had a whole year to understand learner needs and to make sure that they're met. And I hope you can see also that as far as the course is concerned and the study aids and the plan of action that we put in place for you, I hope you can see also that there is a real academic rigor to what we do. It isn't just a matter of you coming on the course, paying us the money and then, be done with it. We are an educational establishment. So being paid for the course is only one element of what we do. Academia and the educational part of it is equally as important to us, and making sure that you are as effectively prepared for the final examinations as possible. So again, I would hope that would go in our favour, that the academic side is equally as important as just you enrolling on the programme side. So I hope, Asif, that helps. That was really just off the top of my head, completely unprepared, but I hope that at least gives you some guidance. And thanks to you, Asif, as well. Really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm sure, however, if any of you also have sort of similar questions, Dan is heading the sales and inquiries team. I'm sure they'd also be very happy to guide you on all of those elements as well. So I think we really have drawn the webinar now to a natural conclusion. Dan, once again, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Can I thank everyone today who has attended? I hope it's been useful. I hope we get to chat to you again and you perhaps decide to enrol with us. And if you do, can I take the opportunity now of wishing you the very, very best with your studies, and we'll look forward to seeing you again very soon.